I'm Birdie, and welcome to MediaWhorz. Today we're taking a look at the Hellsing animated series, created by Gonzo Studios and licensed in America by Funimation Entertainment. So, let's see how long it takes to stake Alucard with some glowing white energy as I throw it to the round table. Let's get the best thing about this series out of the way. The opening was well animated, had some good imagery, some great music, and had fuck all to do with the series.
The premise for this series, specifically this anime, was vampire detectives.
The basic premise of the manga is that the Hellsing Organization is a British agency that protects the Empire against supernatural threats, including vampires, and they employ a vampire named Alucard. But this series is a bit different.
So let's start with the character one would assume is the audience proxy. The vampire that Alucard sires in the very first episode, Cerys Victoria.
Cerys Victoria is a British police officer whose team responds to a disturbance. When the rest of her team are injured or killed, they then turn into ghouls and try to kill Cerys.
She then runs into Alucard, shoots him, and then runs away. She goes into a church and is captured by the vampire that is terrorizing the region. Alucard ends up shooting her through the chest to kill him.
The best part of this episode was when the vampire orders his ghouls to shoot Alucard.
Alucard then saunters over to Cerys and turns her.
Yeah, so she's the newest inductee into the Hellsing Organization. And I hate her in this.
She's useless! The entire second episode was devoted to her growing a pair and getting the courage to shoot again.
They devote an entire episode to her failing.
And they build up her not wanting to drink blood and just drop it.
They don't even build it up that well.
Have you had your soup today? Campbell's, of course. Campbell's, of course.
And the villains in the second episode, they were the lamest villains in the comic, but they've outdone themselves here. It's a pair of Cockney vampires on a moped of death.
What's more, the second episode is where we start to see the inconsistencies in the animation.
Oh yeah, Cardboard Alucard. Speaking of whom, he's the best thing about this anime, and is the only really cool part.
With the most awesome suit I've ever seen.
And some awesome sunglasses, and two of the most awesome guns ever.
He doesn't even seem to give a shit about this show.
I think Alucard knows this isn't the way it's supposed to be, and doesn't give a shit.
Which does make sense, because every time he shows up, it's like he has this weird peekaboo shot where he comes up from the floor, or a wall, or just peeks down from the ceiling.
Bazinga, 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 bazinga.
I still like the scene where he's sitting on a step drinking a blood juicy pack.
That's almost as intimidating as Darkseid sitting on your couch.
There are often times when the animation can't stand up to what it needs to do. It often seems like he's off-screen shaking a cardboard cutout of himself while, I don't know, reading a book. There's an episode that is devoted to Cerys' detective work.
Wasn't she out in the sun for most of that episode?
Didn't she get warned not to go out in the sun? And by don't go out, they obviously meant drape a napkin over her head.
Yeah, she wore a hat. It makes me wonder why Orlok never wore a hat.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been bothered by it if they hadn't told her about the sun being fatal, because the whole sun thing originates with Nosferatu.
Alucard isn't supposed to be the only badass in Hellsing. We also have Walter C. Dornez, but he also suffers from the animation. He looks more like Walter C. Potato Head.
Not to mention he looked like Refrigerator Man when he was standing still.
There was that one scene that is just the most laughably animated scene in the series. It's like an onion of stupidity. There are just too many layers to it.
End of the line, Alfred. Huh? Oh.
Are you alright, Walter?
Ow!
Out
Ow,
of
that
practice,
hurts.
but unscathed.
Get off me,
That
you
was
stupid
quite
bitch.
the good tackle, by the way.
I think we need to do this piece by piece. Everyone picked something wrong with that scene.
Where'd the gun go? He held a gun to Walter's head. There's no sound of a gun drop, there's no moving of the gun, and no one's holding the gun.
Did he forget about the girl who fired an explosive round behind him?
That's the worst tackle I have ever seen. Wait, no, I've got it. That wasn't a tackle. She subdued him with an interpretive dance.
Diarrhea flows like a river.
She's not finished yet. She disarmed the gun hand because the gun's vanished. So she grabs the other hand, moves it out of the way, and then trips him, and they fall like a leaf while asking if Walter's okay.
You are made of stupid.
There's a scene at the end of the series where Walter sacrifices himself to save Integra. He goes down with a helicopter. On the other hand, it turns out that he was perfectly okay.
Dean Walter is blasting off again!
Fuck all those pussies who can't take a helicopter crashing and exploding.
I forgot the motherfucker lived.
And now for Sir Integra Hellsing.
I love her character, but they don't do enough with her.
Ah yes, the bitch who controls the most dangerous creature on the planet, who is apparently hiding double D's under her jacket.
Who would have guessed?
She's a badass in the comics, but you only get to see how badass of a bureaucrat she is in this.
Yeah, she gets bogged down in jurisdiction in this.
So do a lot of the characters.
It should be noted that while I said that Walter suffered from the low-budget animation in this, Integra looked like a stubby male child in this.
She looked like Pegasus's secret love child.
I don't know if they were rushed or just had no budget, but when told to draw a woman in a suit, it's like they just put a woman's head onto a boy's body.
Let's move on to the best character ever. Moving Scar. I don't even remember the character. He's just awesome because his scar moves.
I have a few problems with Moving Scar. Besides the fact that he seemed to have a mobile form of cancer.
No, you got it wrong. It's obviously a worm beneath the flesh.
No, you both have it wrong. Since it's only a temporary tattoo, he had to put it on each day and never got its positioning quite right. But here's the ironic thing. He's an anime-only character, so you think that because they designed him, he'd be the easiest thing for them to get right. But his design shifts the most because of that feature.
But he really is just there to get mowed down near the end.
Wait, who shot him? Was it a werewolf?
He seems to have been shot by a random soldier, and if you ask me why, all I can say is jurisdiction.
Which seems to rule this fucking series more than the supernatural elements do.
They try to make his death emotional, which is kind of weird.
Because we aren't really allowed to develop a connection to him.
We were actually making fun of his death. You know, Ceres kisses him, and all I could think was, he's literally robbing the cradle from the grave.
Ooh, we haven't even talked about
Mr. Anderson.
To preface this, in the manga and the OVA, Anderson is my favorite character. Not here.
He is the paladin and priest, Alucard's counterpart.
I kick ass for the Lord!
He is sent by the Vatican to deal with certain supernatural threats.
And Protestants.
Y'all are a supernatural threat in your own right.
When we first meet him, he's sent to collect the corpse of someone who died.
Wait, he was sent to pick up a corpse?
Yeah, he's supposed to be the ultimate badass, but apparently he drew courier duty that day.
Or they gave him the script for the janitor, and the janitor is fighting a horde of unbeatable zombies.
He goes to collect the corpse, and it turns out the corpse is a vampire that revives itself, and he exterminates it.
Wait, why was he called in? Was it a Catholic school?
Jurisdiction.
And because he's the ultimate badass, the only way the Protestants can chase him off is with paperwork.
The Archbishop has ordered you to return to the Vatican immediately. You will leave by the good graces of Her Majesty.
His character design was more consistent than some of the others, but that might be because we see him less. But he did have this weird idiosyncrasy where he moved his head like a Catholic bobblehead.
Incognito.
Ah yes, I'm depressed to say, I have determined what he is. A lot of people thought he was Orlok. This is wrong. He is an alien Egyptian priest.
Who's into some aggressive ass play.
With piercings that can summon guns.
They don't explain his powers much. Bertie, are you okay?
Shouldn't have put all that crack in my eye!
Apparently he's working for someone by putting chips into people that turn them into vampires. We never quite figured out what the chip subplot is about, but the best theory we have is that apparently these vampires run on Vista, and nothing is closer to hell than Vista. He eventually makes these weird vampire-werewolf hybrids. We get a Twilight scene.
But no one sparkles.
Well...
No one sparkles in this scene.
Apparently his goal was to absorb the power of the Egyptian god Set.
Through his anus.
The running joke is that Set is a snake.
A snake filled with power and life that enters.
He destroys Alucard, apparently gaining the power of a god. Then Alucard says, "No you don't," goes Super Saiyan.
What?
melts down across into a broken gun.
What?
And then fires the broken gun and kills him.
What?
But
Magic.
But he could have
Magic.
Have turned them into
Magic.
Into giant silver stakes of death, or
Magic.
or just smacked him with the cross. Then
Magic.
Then he wouldn't have had to use the broken hand.
Jurisdiction.
It made no sense.
You know, I miss the Nazis. One thing that we have to say when we're giving our judgment of the series is that we're not constantly comparing the series to the manga or the OVA. We simply mean to point out that there is a medium in which these characters were engaging. This is a mess. This series did not know what it wanted to be.
That's a problem with a lot of anime that run out of source material halfway through.
Yeah, they had 2 out of 10 volumes of manga to work from, and as a result, the tone is all over the place. What's more, most of the material that was taken from the comic was altered and changed to fit with the anime-exclusive plot.
This could have been really good. Alucard is one of the creepiest, most kick-ass characters in anime, but he gets so little to do that he just feels bored. I swear to God, Alucard just phoned in his performance. The rest of the characters are sort of parodies of what they are in other versions of this. With Ceres, apparently her brains are in her boobs because as they made those smaller and smaller, she gets dumber and dumber. Integra suffers from fuck all to do, and Anderson just gets neutered. The animation is either passable or laughably bad. The plot doesn't exist. There are a few characters that are brought in to keep things interesting, but none of them are engaging or have any real personality whatsoever. Besides the unintentionally hilarious moments and a few well-done episodes, I can't really tell anyone to watch this just because I know it has been done better. I have to give this a you should be ashamed. Despite a few moments of amusement, this is just a scattershot prologue to a series that doesn't even exist. 4 out of 10.
This was an abomination. No, that's too nice. I don't have a word for how much this pissed me off at times. Then they showed me pretty flashing lights or something so ludicrous that I had to laugh. I liked one character, and that was Alucard. Everybody else pissed me off. And I like Alucard because fuck, he's Alucard. And he just seemed not to give a fuck. Which relates a lot to how I felt towards this anime when I wasn't pissed. I like Hellsing, the manga, the OVA, not the anime. I had hope for this series. And I had hope for a long time. As pessimistic as I act, I hold a lot of optimism in my heart. I hoped it would get better, up until Incognito wrote a giant purple python. That's when I settled on my rating, which is a turd blossom. This anime is a pile of shit. Except for the little bits of corn you find that make you laugh, 3 out of 10.
This series was, in one simple word, bad. They kept creating subplots that they refused to incorporate into the main plot. You have more sympathy for a random soldier who refused to die when fighting a vampire. You have random chips and vampires for a distraction. You have random people making werewolf vampires. You have Incognito trying to get butt raped by Set. The animation was terrible. You can't even keep a scar consistent on one of your characters. Ceres' voice sounded inconsistent, like Caveman's British accent. You hope for so much because the premise is good. However, this is diarrhea on some toast. I give this a turd blossom. It made me laugh, but that wasn't its purpose. 3 out of 10.
This show wasn't unbearable to watch. Some of the voices were well acted, especially Crispin Freeman. Then again, I like every role Crispin Freeman does. The soundtrack and the jazz score that they use are well done. However, the plot is inconsistent and has no idea what it wants to do. Ceres is whiny and obnoxious and has almost no personal growth despite being the audience proxy. Incognito is a horrific villain and completely fails to actually have a purpose. And let's not forget that the animation quality jumps around so much, it needs to be put on fucking Ritalin. Ultimately, it's a you should be ashamed for me. 4 out of 10.
With 2 turd blossoms and 2 you should be ashamed ratings, the average MediaWhorz rating is you should be ashamed. So, oops! It seems I'm falling! Well, see you next time!